Hello, and welcome back to yet another Star Trek movie review, where we are now at the end of the TNG movie era with Star Trek Nemesis. Now, this, like Insurrection, is quite hated amongst Star Trek fans. And the main question is, do I think that it deserves that? Because one of the things that I've been saying for a while now is that this was the very first piece of Star Trek that I was ever introduced to. Um, I was 4 years old when this movie came out back in 2002, but it didn't come out in Ireland until January of 2003, where my mother, who was a massive Star Trek fan at that time, brought me to the cinema to go see it. And from that point on until I rewatched it couple of years later, that I had some vivid memories from my experience in that cinema, such as the dune buggy scene when basically it turns into Mad Max for a while. I remember that. I also remember Data's sacrifice at the end of the movie, as well as Jean Luc talking to B4 at the end of the movie. But I remembered it slightly different from when I was a kid. But we will get to that. So, what did I think after this current rewatch of Nemesis? And it's good, it's okay. It's not as bad as fans say it is. Like, those who don't like this film have valid reasons for not liking it. Um, but to me, with that sentimental reasons behind my this movie, being my introduction into Trek, which didn't get me hooked until years later. Because remember, I was 4 when this came out. Just shy of my 5th birthday in March of 2003 when it came out in Ireland. So it wasn't until 2008/2009, definitely 2009, was when I fully got into Star Trek. Um, but yeah, so what is the plot of Nemesis? Well, essentially, Star Trek Nemesis is got to do with the Romulans. Like we haven't seen enough of those, but this is also post Dominion War for this one. Because when this came out, DS9 had obviously finished, as well as um, Voyager had finished, and it was also when Enterprise had started the prequel to it. So it came out at a point where Star Trek fans were, in a fatigue of it because it was the same formula throughout all the shows and the movies. And yeah, so uh, whilst cruising about after Deanna and Riker's wedding, which I absolutely loved that scene. I thought it was a really good scene. Sir Patrick Stewart getting to act really really well. Showing how much he loves Deanna and Will, that they really are best friends, and finally telling Data to shut up. And it's also funny that he says it to Data and not to Wesley, because briefly you do see Wesley Crusher in the wedding scenes. Also, Guinan makes her at the time, final appearance in this movie, because she hadn't been seen since Generations. And she makes another appearance. I say after the destruction of the Enterprise D, she went back to Earth for the 10 forward on Earth. Um, which was, again, nice to see, because I love Whoopi Goldberg. There's just, you can't not like her. Um, and so they discover that there's a positronic uh, relay out there. Turns out there's another Data called B4. So he kind of plays a pivotal part into the story. So they, Captain Picard gets a hail from Admiral Janeway, making her first appearance since the end of Voyager as Admiral Janeway. Which is nice to see. Would have loved to have some Voyager movies, but I'm getting sidetracked. So they go to Romulus. That's because where they're told because there was a coup on Romulus for the Shinzon of Remus, who took over as the new Praetor after killing off the Council um, prior as a coup to take over Romulus. And turns out Shinzon is a clone of Picard, played by a young Tom Hardy. And Tom Hardy does a fantastic job in this movie. I have no qualms with his acting ability what's in this movie whatsoever. He done in my opinion, a fantastic job. His right hand man is a Reman who's played by Ron Palmer, who I know more so from his role as Hellboy in the two Hellboy movies. Um, who I honestly think is kind of the character he plays, the Reman he plays in this movie, is kind of underutilized. He doesn't really talk that much, um, and then he's just killed off by Riker, which rightfully so, which we'll get to. Um, so yeah, they find out that he's the clone. Uh, Picard goes to beams down to Romulus for lunch or dinner with his clone, where he learns that the Romulans had his DNA somehow, and they cloned him, and they were going to replace him. And I think that where they might have gotten his DNA from is from the episode Unification Parts 1 and 2, when, Picard and Data was on Romulus. That's my theory of how they managed to get his DNA. Um, but yeah, after that didn't happen because a different Praetor took over. He was booted over to the dilithium mines on Remus, where he was badly mistreated. But the Remans took him in, um, which yeah, that it's all enough backstory. So things progress. Deanna gets space raped by the clone of Picard. Unfortunately, they try to leave. After Picard gets kidnapped, they figure out B4 is leaking information to the scimitar, which is Shinzon's ship. Data disguises himself as B4. They make an escape, and then they have this big, massive battle, and it visually it looks beautiful. Even on the Blu-ray, it looks absolutely amazing, and it's really good to see. Even though it's not the actual filming model for the Enterprise E, it is all CGI. It the E looks beautiful, even in the CG model, it looks good, and it's great that we got to see it in its full glory, in its last on-screen appearance, because we don't really see any more on-screen appearances, and we kind of do in Prodigy. We don't know if it's what ship it is, because on the nacelles for the Sovereign class that shows up at the end of Prodigy season one, it does have the Enterprise E registry on the nacelle, uh, very hard to make out. So it's not necessarily 100% confirmed if the E does show up at that point. Which if it does, obviously it'd be Captain Worf who's there. So the Enterprise rams into the scimitar, and that's when Shinzon's like, "Fuck this! I'm out. Let's just deploy this weapon, get rid of the E, head to Earth, get rid of the humans, and that way we can take over the quadrant." And so, with the Enterprise E being badly damaged, they say Picard manages to beam over, leaving Data in command, who after Picard beams transporters go down, which means Picard, if he does manage to stop it, he will end up sacrificing himself. And that doesn't sit well with Data. So he, being the android that he is, not needing air, flings himself out onto the scimitar, gets inside, makes his way there. Picard does kill Shinzon, which brings a brand new meaning to killing yourself, because that's literally what Picard does. And one of the big Chekhov guns is shown in this, where early on Data mentions a new development of a emergency transporter that can only take one person. And when Data gets to Picard, he puts it on him. He immediately gets beamed back over to the Enterprise, and Data self-sacrifices. And that would be a beautiful scene had they not brought him back in Picard twice. But still, even him sacrificing himself in this movie, I liked it. It was one of the, like I said in the beginning of this video, it's one of the things that stuck out to me the most as a 4-year-old, was seeing Data self-sacrifice. Um, Even though I wasn't emotionally attached to Data at that point, wasn't a Star Trek fan back then. Uh, but yeah, the fact that they just can't let Data die, by bringing them back for the end of season 1 of Star Trek Picard, to then kill him off, to then bring him back for season 3. So yeah, they keep killing Data. Uh, so as I said, this movie has some sentimental value to me. That's why I can't openly dislike it. Um, and like with Insurrection, it kind of feels like an extended episode of TNG. Like, looking at it from that point of view, of it, seeing Nemesis as an episode of TNG, you know, it would slot in. This does seem like something that would slot in perfectly during any season of the Next Generation. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts. So I suppose I should now rank the TNG movies, because we're at the end of the TNG movies. Obviously, you guys know at number one is First Contact, because it is the best Star Trek movie ever made. And if AJ comments saying that it's not, he is delusional in his old age. He knows for damn sure it's First Contact, not Wrath of Khan. Um, then I would say I put Generations at 2, then Nemesis, then Insurrection. Like, one of the things that I've been learning through my entire rewatch of these Star Trek movies is I genuinely like all of them. Uh, there's some I like more than others, but on these rewatches, I just don't find anything to make it seem like I absolutely don't like the movie, because there's a lot to enjoy in every Star Trek movie. And yeah, that has been my ranking of the TNG movies. I'm not going to rank it against the original series movies yet. You'll have to wait until I get to Star Trek Beyond, which will be later on this month. Because I am going to finish the other 3 this month. So yeah, with that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll be back on the 12th for another Tales from My Backlog, where I'm going to be covering the second Rocky movie. So I'll see you all on the 12th.